In this video, we're going to look at the exercises in the word scramble lab. So let's start with number 1. Complete the method. Public static Boolean has to a string s. And this lab really encourages you to use character at to char array as well as split. So we're going to try to use those strategies. So this first one, we have to see if there's 2 character a's in the string. Let's go to the code. I'm going to use a char array called letters, and I'm going to ask s to give me its char array. So s.toChar returns a character array. And now I can iterate easily through this. Instead of iterating through the string and using substring, I'm going to iterate through the char array letters. So this loop is going to be controlled by letters.length. And I'm going to access letters using the square bracket notation that we use for arrays. And we're going to see if this is equal to an a. And we're only looking to see if it equals a little a. That's fine. And we need to count these. I didn't create a counter here, so I'm going to create a counter. And if we find a letter that equals a letter A, we're going to count it by incrementing count. And then all we have to do is return if there's at least 2 A's. And I think it's at least. Yes, it does say at least in the instructions. So count is greater than or equal to 2. Let's test this. Alphabet, and we'll see what happens with that, and then we can send in something else, maybe something that only has 1 A, and see what we get when we run that. So true, alphabet has 2 A's, false, cat does not have 2 A's. All right, let's look at number 2. Number 2. Complete the method public static Boolean is a vowel. Take in a char for the letter. This returns true if the supplied parameter is a vowel. Crafty programs have a single line inside this method. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so we can write this as a Boolean expression and see if it equals A. Make sure you only have 1 character in there. Or the letter might equal E, or the letter might equal I, O, or U. So I'm going to try to save myself a little bit of time, just like this. So AE, I, O, and U. Now, if it's one of those, I'm going to return true. I'm going to try to squeeze this like this so we can see them. Reading it stacked is a little bit easier. And if we don't hit the return statement there, we can simply return false. And so let's practice, or let's run this code. So it is a vowel, and we can pass in an E. And then we can pass in a B and C, or a C, and see if that works as well. So true for the E and false for the C. Now, this is perfectly logical, but if you're just returning the result of a Boolean expression, there's a much better way to write this. Simply return the result of the Boolean expression. Just like this, and you should get the same answers. Okay. Let's look at number 3. Number 3, complete the method. Public static int num vowels pass in a string. That returns the number of vowels in the string parameter. This method should utilize or call the previous method. This is a really important concept because if you've already written code to determine if something's a vowel, for example, then we don't want to have to write all that code again. So I'm going to create a char array, and I'm going to ask S to split on an empty string. That'll give us every character in its own element in the array. Oh, not split, I'm sorry. We want to use s.toCharArray. There we go, that's better. Now that will give us every character. Yeah, split actually returns an array of string, and I'm not looking to work with strings this time. Okay, so we're going to iterate through our letters array. And if something is a vowel, we're going to pass in letters at index I. Then we're able to use this method up here. Just by calling this method, it'll tell us if the letter we pass in is a vowel or not. Now I do have to count these, so I do need a variable to count these. So if I determine if something is a vowel, the count is incremented. And then once the loop is finished, I can return the count. So let's pass this in. I am going to comment these things out as we go forward, or we'll end up with a lot of output that we don't want to have to evaluate. So we're looking for a number of vowels. I'll pass in alphabet again, alphabet, and this looks like 3 vowels. So we're going to run this and we should get a 3. Very nice. Let's look at 4. Number 4, complete the method public static boolean even chars. Takes in a string, a char A and a char B, and it returns true if there are an equal number of char A and char B in the string parameter. Well, this is very similar to what we did before. Instead of looking for vowels, we're looking for A and B. And I'll need to count them because by the time we get to the end of our loop, we need to know if we have the same number of A's and same number of B's. So I'm going to call this A count, and then B count, and then I'm going to get my array ready to go, and we'll ask S to give its character array. Then we're going to iterate through the character array. And if we find a letter that's equal to whatever character A is, then we're going to count it. And of course, we'll do the same thing for B. So if we find the character B, we'll increment the B count. And then once we get to the end of the loop ends here, we would simply want to return if the counts are equal. So if A count is equal to B count. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's test it. So we might want to see if there's the same number of A's as there are E's. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to call the method itself. There we go. Much better. All right, and then we can think of maybe a word. Can we think of a word that this might work with? Let's just add an E on the end. That should return true. Alphabet E. So in the first case, there's two A's and one E, so that would return false. In the second case, there's two A's and two E's, so this should return true. Okay, 4 is complete. Let's look at 6. Number 6, complete the method public static boolean 2 in a row, string S and char A. This returns true if A occurs twice in a row in the string parameter. Okay. Okay, so we would like to iterate through string and see if there's two characters in a row. So I'm going to turn this into a char array. And then I'm going to iterate through the char array. But I don't want to go all the way to the end because I'm looking for a pair of character A's. So I have to reduce my loop by 1. So letters dot length -1. And then I'm going to see if letters at index I is equal to character A, and also its neighbor has to be equal to character A. So its neighbor is I plus 1, and this has to be equal to A as well. Not the character A, the variable A. And if I find 2 in a row, I can simply return true right here. However, if the loop terminates and I haven't found 2 in a row, then I do need to return false. So let's try to come up with something to test it with. So 2 in a row. Let's see. Giraffe has F repeated. And what else can we call? 2 in a row, we pass in alphabet. And we're looking to see if the A is repeated. So in the first example, we're trying to see if the F is repeated in giraffe, and it is. And secondly, we tested to see if A is repeated in alphabet. And so here's our test cases. So that returns false. Okay, we're going to look at problem number 7. Problem number 7 says, complete the method public static string capitalized vowels string S. That returns a new string where all the vowels in S have been capitalized. And yes, we've already written a method for checking if something is a vowel. So I'm going to convert this to a character array. And I'm going to iterate through it. And if I find a vowel, and I'm going to call my other method and pass in the letter in question, which is letters at index I. And if that's the case, then I'm going to modify my letters array so that that is converted to a capital letter. So we might find it easier to do this with a string because the string has a two uppercase. So if we wanted to use the string method for that, what we can do is concatenate our letter with a string. And then once we do that, we can call the two uppercase on it. The issue now is that get my parentheses right, that this value is actually, oh, I think we have the right number of parentheses, that this value is actually a string, but I don't want a string. I want it to convert back to a character at a certain, at the first index. And then we'll assign that back in place of the letters. Okay, so by the time this is finished, we don't want to print, we want to return. We want to return a string with all of the character array as a string. So there's a string constructor for taking in a character array. All we have to do is pass in the letters character array, and this will convert it to a string. So I'm going to run the code, and then we'll come back and talk about this line again, because this is probably a little confusing. So we're going to comment this out. And what's the name of our method? Capitalize vowels. Capitalize vowels. So we'll put elephant in there and we'll run it. So we can see that indeed the vowels have been capitalized, but it's important to understand how that is working. So I have to, in order to use this method to uppercase, this is a string method. And so I need to convert my letter into a string. So if I were to break this statement apart, I would say this. The individual letter is going to be the char from the letters array, just concatenated with an empty string. That'll actually convert it to a string. So then I could put letter here. And what's happening here is I'm converting it to uppercase. So if I were going to break that into its own statement, I would say letter dot to uppercase. And so now letter is equivalent to the uppercase version of itself. And now I have to convert the letter back into a char. So I simply take the call char at and pass in a 0 because there's only one letter and that letter has to be at index 0. And so it stores the modified character back into the character array. And of course, this converts the character array back to a string. So now that I've broken apart the statements, it should do the same thing. It's just that I had them chained together. So let me put the code back up here again so you can see how it works. All right, let's look at 8. Number 8, complete the method public static string n copies. So we're going to take in a character, C, and then we're going to take in an n, which is an integer. That returns the string comprised of n copies of the supplied character. So reminder, concatenating a string and a char result in a string, and we did see that before. So move this here. And we're doing, this is an accumulation algorithm, right, where we're just kind of accumulating a string. So the result is what I'm going to return at the end. That's the goal. And what I have to do is concatenate n number of C's to the end. So I can just write a loop that will run n times. And then to result, I can just concatenate my character into there. So I just concatenate C. So this right here, if you're looking at an equivalent statement, it would be result equals the concatenation of result plus C, and you can concatenate a character with a string. That's fine. But the compound assignment operator kind of takes care of that for us. So let's run code to test this. What is the name of this method? The name of this method is nCopies. And we might take the capital letter G, and we would want maybe five of those. And we have 5 G's. Let's look at number 9. Number 9 says, complete the method public static string longest word, string S, that returns the longest word in the supplied sentence. The split method will be helpful for this problem. So we have hello, how are you? We want to look at each individual word and return the word, the entire word, that is the longest. So this is a problem where you have to find the maximum, but we have to also remember the word. We don't want to just remember its length. We want to remember the word. So I'm going to convert this to a string array using split. So we're taking in a sentence and we're going to break it into the words. I'm going to use split and I'm going to pass in a single space. So string array words will have each individual word in it. So I need to keep track of the max length. And I'm just going to do that by setting it to the very first word's length. So words at index 0 dot length. And then I'm going to iterate, and I also have to remember the word. So let's also remember the word. Max word equals words at index 0 as well. And I'm going to keep these separate. You can do this, I suppose, just with this value, but I'm going to keep 2 variables for one to keep track of the length and one to keep track of the word. So we are going to iterate through the words array. So the control expression will stop when you reach words.length. And I'm going to check every word to see what its length is and to see if that word's length exceeds the max length. And if it does, I'm going to set the max length equal to this word's length, as well as the max word equal to this word. And let me get this correct. I don't want the length of the array. I want the length of, the word at that position. So this needs to be a length method. Yeah, remember that this is a string and I'm getting the string's length. Meanwhile, this is an array and I'm getting the array's length. Okay, so just make sure you differentiate those two. And in the end, once the loop is finished, I know that the max word is the longest word and I can return that. So let's go up to the test and see if we can test this. Let's see, longest word. Hello is the longest word. Let's see how that works. So hello is the longest word. We might change that up and see if we choose something other than the first word. Uh, mm, I'll just put the word alphabet, just how about randomly in the middle? Oops, let me get that again. Didn't want to leave. We'll try one more time. I didn't want to leave this space at the end. I don't think it will have any effect on our output, but didn't want to leave it there. So this is a problem because it's not picking up alphabet. So let's look to see what we did wrong. Oh, right here. I should have put in an I. We don't just want to look at the first word. We want to look at the word at I. So let me run this again. All right, that's good, and that's why we test it. That's why we don't only just choose the very first word. We choose other words as well, so that we can make sure it works in all situations. All right, next, number 10. Number 10, complete the method public static Boolean contains prefix. So we pass in a string s and an integer n. That returns true if the string parameter contains the word's prefix later in the string. So word's prefix is defined by the first n characters of the string parameter. So if you look at the first sample, the prefix is a length of 1, so a would be the prefix. And yes, a does appear later in the sentence. And then in the next one, since n is equal to 2, we want to see if AB appears later in the sentence, and it does. And then lastly, ABX does not appear later in the string. So I want to capture the prefix. That substring starts at index 0, goes to index n. Then I want to create a loop that loops through s, but I want to be careful that I reduce the limit by n because I can't go all the way to the end of the string because the prefix is going to be longer than just one character. Then I want to see if the value that I get at I that has a length of n is equivalent to the prefix. And if it is, I'm going to return true. If it's not, I'm going to return false. Now, it's also important that I don't start this loop at 0. If I start this loop at 0, then I'm looking at the very beginning of the string s, and it will, of course, match the prefix. Instead, I can start at 1 or I can start at n. I'm going to start it at 1. Let's start it at n. I think that'll work fine. Okay, I have test cases up here. These are the test cases that were given to us in the lab, and we're going to run them, and we'll see what the result is. So the first two were true, and the last one was false.